All right. That's one thing I didn't actually tell you. And as I press the live button, I think I put it in the email, but we are going to be live. I have a Facebook group here called Up My Hockey, which is a parent group that has almost 1,300 members in it now from across the United States and Canada, all on their own journeys. And like we talked briefly before, and that's kind of where this whole thing started for me. Like the genesis was how to help others go and get to where either they want to go or where I was and want, and then they want to get there too and help their players. And I thought this was like absolutely perfect, meaning your book, as far as the context in it, the content in it, the message in it is absolutely rings true for some of the things that we talk about in this group, and I think it's awesome for young players to be able to listen to it. So without further ado, I want to welcome Kaleb Dahlgren, author of Crossroads, to the podcast Up My Hockey. Thanks for coming, Kaleb.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored. I'm really looking forward to this, and thank you for bringing me on. Appreciate it.
No worries. I can respect. I mean, I heard your story. Well, I knew Crossroads existed, but then we listened to the NHL Network a lot coming in to hockey practices with my three boys. I have three boys, and we're in and out for spring hockey, and the NHL Network's usually on. And we heard about a 15-minute interview with you there on one of the morning programs. And then someone in the group posted a picture with your book saying what a great read it was, and they suggested everyone else read it. And I was like, well, maybe I should try and interview Kaleb. And then there was like a resounding kind of response of, yeah, see if you can get him on. So anyways, the way the social media works now, I reached out to you on Instagram, just for those of you listening. And Kaleb got back to me, with your, gratefulness and saying, yeah, I'd love to do it, but reach out to the publicist. And anyways, and so here we are. I mean, now we're chatting about the book that I have read and impacted me, and I'm sure it's impacting others. And what is the response right now, the general response of like the impact of this book on people you've spoke to about it?
Thank you. I appreciate it. There's been a pretty profound effect. I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. I hope for it. And I was hoping that it would connect with people, but lots of people have said that it's really changed their life or changed their perspective, have made them really, really reflect and think about things that they may never thought about before. And also even challenges some of their beliefs too about how they are. Like one example, a person said that they challenged their beliefs with death, and why am I so sad about it? Why wouldn't I celebrate the life that I was with? And yeah, so some of those things. And then even like the suicide aspect, about how some people aren't as suicidal, or it has helped them cope with their suicidal feelings and thoughts. It's been pretty crazy. And I'm just honored to have that kind of experience, and people actually connect with it on that deep of a level. So that was a whole goal, and to actually have my goal be met, I think it deems it success in my eyes. It's not how many books I sell, it's how many people I connect with.
Yeah, well said. And a part of that, I mean, I was wondering, and by the way, I have a connection. Geez, I don't want to do this to you. I do have a connection a bit to the crash, meaning that I played with Chris Joseph, and obviously Jackson, as you know, is a teammate who didn't make it through, and so everyone has their own connection to this thing and in different ways. And so there was a layer there that I think in my own head and my own grieving, like, struck me. Obviously I was a kid that was on a bus. I was a pro. I was on a bus. I mean, we can all go there, sports teams, being a hockey player, traveling across the prairies. Then you have a teammate that you really love and you respect, and you knew what, he was about as far as family first. And Jackson was running around in our dressing room in Mannheim, back when we used to play together. And I saw him grow up over 3 years, and, never met him as a young man. But I mean, all of that really was like this whirlwind of emotion for me. Right. And then reading again, it was going through it again. But we spoke about the book a little bit, and he said just how respectful you were with it, that like you wanted to do this, but he definitely gave you praise and respect for the fact that like you contacted everybody and you wanted them to know about what this meant to you and how you wanted to go about it. And even, maybe approval's the wrong word, but like wanted kind of consent, right? It sounded like that you wanted to make sure that this was right. Can you talk about that process? Because I'm sure like the human aspect of that, you understood the gravitas of what you were about to embark on, and you wanted to make sure people were understanding your intentions. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I really wanted to make sure. And for me, that was one of the hard parts about even writing the book, was how is it going to impact them? Because obviously my life isn't all about me being a Bronco, but I know a portion of this book will be about that, because that was one of the biggest things that had happened in my life, was the effect of the Broncos crash. And it's changed my life. It's changed everyone's life on that bus. And even externally from that bus, it's changed lots of people's lives. So I knew that that was going to be a touchy topic for sure. And I really wanted to honor everybody that was on the team and try to get everyone's name in there, who was a part of the Broncos. And even the tribute chapter itself for the 16 who aren't here, that was probably one of the biggest things for me too, that I really wanted to do. And so I sent off every single piece that I wrote to the individual families. So I sent off Jackson's to the Joseph family, and said, you can tweak it, you can edit it, do whatever you want. I'm more than happy. This is my thoughts and how I perceived Jackson to be to me, and some things that I really admired in him. And I know this isn't a complete picture. It's literally just time frame that I was with him. And it's literally just a chat, like a paragraph or two. And I know it's not going to be complete, but I want to mention him and honor his legacy, that he had an impact that he had on me too. And so I think that was one of the big things I wanted to make sure that all of them were okay with what I wrote about their ones that aren't here today.
Yeah, super respectful. And I know the Joseph family did appreciate it, and they couldn't speak, loudly enough about the specialness of the group, and even the families involved in that group. Chris definitely believes that, the parental system and the family system creates the people within it, and he said that they're like the young men on that team were solid men. And he said that was a tribute he felt to the parents that were there as well, raising them. So when something like that struck, like the people that got together to know each other, it was, it was a special, it was a special group that will forever be connected for sure. You mentioned words that I wanted to get into already, like perspective and beliefs and what those things mean. And I think that there is power in perspective, because bringing in that family unit again, if you're not exposed to things or ways of thinking, it can be completely foreign and not even on your radar that you can comprehend something a certain way. Yeah. It's one of the things that I do talk about in Up My Hockey when it comes to, similar things, but this idea of this a belief system that makes us up as people, that allows us to go to the rink and show up a certain way, that allows us to go to charity events and show up a certain way, that a lot of these things are built off beliefs, and we can change our beliefs. It seems to me, reading from the book, that a lot of your belief system was wired before this even happened, right? To be, for lack of a better word, empty analysis here, but the glass is half full. Like that was the way that you were brought up, or that's the way that you were wired. How much you think was nurture and how much you think was nature when it came to that overall outlook for you?
I'd say definitely quite a bit was, I say half and half, honestly. I think for me, I was fortunate enough to have such a great support system and parents who were the type of people that led by example with the glass half full, and that did try to find the positives in every situation. And I had tons of people in my support system who were positive people who would try to find the best light in the worst times. And one example, even in the book, was my personal trainer, Chad Martin. I didn't even realize he was suffering with cancer and a brain cancer, and he literally lived his life to the fullest and was treating everyone how he wanted to be treated. And then to find out like a month or two before he passed away that he was battling brain cancer was a shock. So he literally didn't act like he lived with it. He was his same self, always happy, always upbeat, always wanted to make you feel special and treat you like how you wanted to be treated. And that was one of the big things for me that really stood out, was just the impact that he had on me at that age and molding me into the person I am. And then even the fact that I should have passed away if I was with my dad in his vehicle. And then when he got hit and he got in his accident, I would have been gone too. And just kind of how fast life can just change, and to really just enjoy it, because life can go in an instant. And I knew that even at a young age, losing my teammate. So I had this definitely throughout my life, I'd say, just through the people I had, but then also inside of me too. I'm the kind of person who thinks, why wouldn't I try to have a happy life? Like, it's not fun having a negative life. And if you do focus on negative, nothing positive ever happens because you're only thinking on the negatives. And so for me, that was one of the big things, was being a diabetic and being told you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, I tried to focus on the positives in that time and really just tried to say, hey, you know what? I can still do this. I can still do that. I'm going to try to make the most of the situation given. And people already have made the most of it. Like Bobby Clark is one of them who has done amazing things and it was a trailblazer. But I think that for sure it was inside of me too. But I want to say I give credit to my people, my support systems, because I really truly think they helped make me the person I am today.
Yeah, what a wild time with your father and what he went through. And I don't want to really cover the book point for point because I want to give people a reason to read it. But that was, did it ever get connected to that crash? Was what happened to your dad? Like, was it the crash, the impetus for the disease that he ended up having?
They think so. They think that due to that, it onset the illness. And so normally there's some big, I guess, catastrophic event. And even with my diabetes, I had the chicken pox, I believe, and then the flu. And then they think the flu onset my diabetes.
Wow.
And so it's the same kind of thing with his case too. They think the accident onset his sarcoidosis.
Because you had, for lack of a better term, like a kind of a trial run with like how to deal with living a full life, as you call it, while there's somebody close to you who's not living a great life, right? Who's sick, who's at home. You had to leave for hockey, or you had the choice to leave for hockey. But it sounded like, again, in those words that you used, that is exactly what your father wanted you to do. And if you held that close enough, and even if you put the shoe on the other foot and said, if I was in this situation, which seems to be like kind of a skill that you use sometimes, right? Like, how would I want others to act in this scenario? Is that accurate?
100% accurate. And that's exactly the skill I still use today, is to put myself in the shoes of other people and really empathize with them and see where they are at in their life too. And for me, that was one of the big things I learned at a younger age was, when I moved away when I was 16, he wanted me so badly to go and chase my dreams. He didn't want to hold me back. And he said, like, this is what you've been working for. This is one step into your hockey process. This is going to help you develop. He's like, you got to go. You're going to mature. You're going to be a better person when you leave. And when you come back, you'll be that much more mature. He said, this is going to just be an impact for you. And so it was definitely difficult though, especially leaving when your dad is one of your best friends in life. And you know that your mom is struggling too, to try to help him. And that summer was difficult for lots of reasons because I wouldn't even go and hang with my friends. That's how severe it was. I'd have to take care of him. And if I did leave him for a long time, I'd feel terrible. So it was definitely a challenging summer for us all. And it was, I want to say it was a perspective that really helped me throughout that process.
Right. Was there like a point in time there? Because, you talk about the debating, right? The internal kind of conflict of should I go, should I not go? How did you get to a point of peace with it? Like, was there a turning point at any spot in that summer?
I think the turning point for me was just him continually saying like, hey, this is what you've done. This is what I want you to do. Just go and do it. He said, life is too short and you know that is too short. And if you don't do this, you'll be kicking yourself for not going. Right. And he was right. And that was kind of where I came in for perspective, where I lost my teammate. I lost my personal trainer. I know how fast that life can change, and that if I didn't go and try this out, I would regret it probably. At the same time, would I regret it if my dad passed away? Maybe, but I would have known I was chasing my dream and that's what he would have wanted me. So I would have felt comfortable with that.
Right. In his honor, right? Chasing your dream in his honor.
And that was exactly it. Like I even used it as motivation too. And that was another aspect where I kind of was like, you know what? I'm going to play the season for my dad. And then I want to do the best I can for him too. And to show that I should be there and I should be on this team and I should be doing well.
You talked about your trainer, you brought him up, and I wasn't sure if I was going to, but since you did, I think that there is an interesting piece there that maybe the casual listener or maybe the casual sports, weekend kind of warrior doesn't quite get, but is that idea of the not no pain, no gain, but the idea of understanding like limits and that we are in a sense limitless, and how when you can explore that barrier, that mental, physical barrier, that's usually it's in our head, like that can be so useful, not only in your training and trying to develop your physical body, but once you've proven to yourself that, oh, it does lie between my ears, like you're able to construct kind of a belief system or a perspective that can enable you in other ways. Was that sort of your first taste of that at that point in time?
Yeah, it was for sure my first taste. And when I felt the lactic acid, I was like, this hurts so much. What's going on? And he's like, oh, it's good for you. And that was such a good mindset switch where I was like, oh, it's so painful. It hurts. He's like, no, it's good for you. It's like fuel. And then that was like, okay, you're right. I do need to switch my mindset on this. I need to be like, oh, this is great. I'm going to be better every time I feel this, that I should be feeling this way because I know the next day I'm going to be better. And so that was just a perspective switch in that little sentence really can make a difference. But some people just put it off and like, oh, whatever. But if you actually think about it, and when these things do happen, you actually reflect and sit on it and like, okay, this does make sense. And I do need to have this right mindset around this aspect.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because you said it's just a small perspective, but it hurts, right? When we're just talking about that physical, like psychological barrier, right? It hurts. Your brain's telling you to stop because it hurts. That's kind of what our physiology is told to do. But when we actually understand that, no, this is helpful, or I am able to do more, at least for me, like that was like the competitive juices got going, right? Like, how far can I go? Are you familiar with Dave Goggins at all? David Goggins?
Yes. Yeah, I am.
Did you read his book?
I have not read his book. No.
Oh my God. Talking about taking it to the nth level. Like that's like exploring boundaries. Like I'm sure you'd resonate. I mean, not maybe with his cuss words that he uses all the time, but you would resonate with his message, I think, about what we're capable of. And we keep pushing our boundaries. He's been quoted that he thinks that we're operating at about 40% as a human race.
Huh. Interesting.
He thinks there's like 60% left for most of us. And like, and when you start thinking about that, like how often we do stop at comfort zone 1, right? And if we push, it's not too far, but really we're capable of more and more and more. He really challenged my perspective actually with that a lot, as did you, and it seems like you have with others as well, because that is that perspective. Like, why isn't it a celebration instead of guilt, shame, right? Like all these other things that come in. But you talked about grieving, and I'll just go there because that's where my head went. That you said that everyone has a different process, and the fact that you are doing well, right? That you are moved on is not the right word. You always said there will be a scar there, but the fact that you are able to use this as something to be positive, right? Something to be of service with. Have you ever felt resentment from that, from people that are having a hard time moving on? That like, how come you get to feel this way and I feel the other way? Because Chris Joseph kind of spoke about that even within his own family, right? That some people would have a good day, and if you're having a bad day when somebody's having a good day, it's hard not to feel like, how are you feeling so good? I feel terrible. Do you know what I mean? Like that whole dynamic can be kind of weird.
Yeah, for sure. And I have had people question it, and even like I said in the book, how the psychologist was like, "What do you mean you have this perspective?" And it doesn't make sense to some people, but to others, it does make sense. And that's okay. And I understand that we're not all wired the same, and we are all different beings on this earth, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so what works for me may not work for someone, but I think I have for sure felt that in different instances. But at the same time, I understand that everybody does heal differently, and that there is no right or wrong way either. It's not that my way works and your way doesn't. There's no right or wrong way. And that it may take longer for other people or it may take less for others, and that's completely fine. And that's life.
Do you feel it can work? Now, I'm talking the therapy aspect of getting over grief, which I have zero credibility in, but do you think like that the way, like, do you think that if you can harness your perspective, that this could be a tool for others, like that it is available to them? Do you think it can work for everybody?
I don't think it worked for everybody, but I think it can work for sure. And it has worked for me. And some of the stuff that I even focus on is controlling things I can control. And it's such a hard topic to even think about. Well, maybe not think about, but to actually do, because we're throwing so many different things in life. An example right now, pandemic. We do have some control, but we don't have a lot. And I'll just use the example in the book as the easiest example so people can relate to is a crash. I literally don't have any control of the semi-driver going through the stop sign. I don't have control of who made it, who didn't. I don't have control of my injuries. I don't even have control of what's going on in next week after or I could hit my head and something could happen. So I really don't have much control in life, and we really don't. And we all want control in life, or some of us do. Most of us want control in life. And to accept that I don't have that control and to focus on the things I can control, which is my perspective, my attitude, my work ethic, how I want to move forward and honor those who aren't here. I think if we could really just sat down and focused on those things and how we wanted to treat others, and we really just sat and thought with that and actually took a step forward in that direction, we'd be able to heal from tougher situations and understand. But the big thing is the key piece that's missing is acceptance. And I think that we have to accept what has happened. And some of us never do get to that point. Some of us do get to that point. And some of us still have those why questions. And knowing that for me personally, I had lots of why questions. Why am I still here? Why are others not? How come this person behind me isn't here when I was in front of them? How does this make sense? Why did this even have to happen? Why all of these whys? But sometimes you'll never get an answer. And that's why I've learned to accept. And I think the acceptance piece is a big one for me in the healing process of moving forward.
Yeah, man. Well said. Like acceptance is such a big word. And I've used it with my own kids in a much more, unprofound way, but it's like my one kid's a goalie. You let in a goal you don't like.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you need to accept it. You don't have to like it.
Yes.
Right. Like that's the difference, right? Like you have to understand the difference between those two things. Like accepting it is one thing. You do not have to like it. No one has to tell you like the crash. No one has to tell you anything that you like anything, but you do have to accept that it existed. Right. Yeah. And like that in and of itself then loses the resistance, I think, around that event, and the resistance, I think, is what really hurts us. I want to expand a little bit on how you said there, like, so the crash, the things you can't control, because it's crazy how much it mirrors what I call my mindset 101, where I do talk about an event, and I use COVID in my event and like in my training, because it's so real to most people, right? And to most hockey players. So this COVID thing happens, right? And it's a natural response for the majority of hockey players to say, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't. And so what does that do, right? It changes your emotions. It changes your thoughts. It changes your actions. And then it also gives you results from that whole train, right? And my whole thing was like, what if we say, like, what can I do because of COVID? Like, what am I allowed to work on now that I couldn't otherwise? Where is my advantage here that others aren't seeing, right? And then all of a sudden you start seeing clues the opposite direction, and guess what? That changes your emotions, it changes your thoughts, it changes your action, changes your results, right? Like, it sounds like that's what you're talking about, right? Because that crash, you've turned into being a positive. What is good about this? How can I honor these people? How can I move forward? How can I give back? And your focus seems to have allowed you to do that and to impact others. So I don't know, can you maybe add some color to that at all? Like about that choice and how there is one there?
Yeah. Oh, there is definitely. And the thing is, there's a quote out there that says life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. And I've always lived by that quote. And maybe it's not, the percentages are the same, whatever, but it is true, because in every situation, we can control how we want to react to it. Any situation, we can control how we want to react to it. And our choice afterwards really dictates our future. And that's kind of the whole idea behind even the Crossroads aspect, was that we are faced with these life situations that put us in the middle of a crossroad. And we can either choose to go down the positive path or down the negative path, or just choose any path that we want to go down. And for me, I wanted to choose the positive path in the right and bright section and try to find light in the darkness. And there really wasn't much positivity coming out of the crash, not gonna lie, but I tried to make some positive things out of it. And one of the things was just being grateful for the aspect of having known these people on the bus and having to develop a relationship with them. And even grateful that I still have an opportunity to live today and to live for myself, but also for the 16 who aren't here too, and to make the most of my time while I have it. And like you said, we have to focus on what we can control. And so I did work on my beliefs and my attitude and my work ethic and how I wanted to recover from this and what I wanted to do moving forward to honor them and to also honor myself and follow my passions and dreams. Right. And then, like you said, where you put yourself in their shoes, that was a big one for me too, where I was like, if I'm not here on this earth, how would I want others to live? Would I want them to be sad, to grieve about me, and to not live their life to the fullest, or to have hurt in their life? No, I'd want them to be happy, to enjoy life to the fullest, to remember me, to celebrate me, to make the most of their memories and to really enjoy life, because it can be gone fast. So I think it's a pretty big perspective, but I think once people get to that point, they can find some healing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And for those who just joined, I said we are live here. It seems like it actually didn't go live in the group, but I'm live on my Facebook channel. And by all means, if you have a question for Kaleb, those joining in, thank you for joining and sharing in his story. Kaleb, I read in your book that you always be remembered as a Humboldt Bronco survivor, and there I have it across the ticker at the bottom, right? I mean, one, you're a fantastic human being, and maybe I should have put that there, Kaleb Dahlgren, fantastic human being, because you're a star example, but so much so, I'm going to tell you a funny story, because that first interview I listened to you, right, on the NHL Network, I got off that 15 minutes being like one of those psychologists that talk to you, right? I was like, this guy's too good to be true. Like there's no way this is real. Like, I wasn't that defiant, but like, it was like, you just come across as like, wow, man, like these people actually exist. Like, you can be this positive and have this type of an outlook. And then when I talked to Chris Joseph again, he's like, man, it's him. It's absolutely him. Like, it was how Jackson, that is so surreal to me, like how that even works, right? Like that. And maybe I'll let you tell it, but I mean, it sounds like you are, a freak of medical history, really. Like, what has happened to your brain? Shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Yet the one thing that was affected the most was like this natural beauty of your empathy, right? Which went on hold for a while, almost like to recover and come back even stronger. Can you just talk a little bit about the lesions and the bleeds and kind of what that little time was like for yourself and your parents?
Yeah. So I suffered, I'll go through all my injuries. So I suffered a severe traumatic brain injury and a fractured skull, puncture wound to my skull, a scalp decoloring. So this whole side of my head was completely shaved off. I still have some scars here, but I'm also balding too, so that probably doesn't help.
I just have an excuse.
Yeah. Broken neck, broken back, blood clots in my left arm, right eardrum, muscle nerve ligament damage in my neck and my back. But other than that, that was all the injuries. I probably had a broken nose too, not gonna lie. I have better breathing now, so I feel like it was broken. But for me, the biggest thing was my brain injury and just how severe it was. And so I don't remember 4.5 days of being in the hospital right after the crash. I remember everything right up to the crash, and then everything went black. And so I don't remember those 4.5 days. And in those 4.5 days, I was actually talking, walking, meeting people, but I had this flat affect on my face. And I was very vulgar. I was disrespectful, rude. I was so uncharacteristic of myself that it was actually quite scary for a lot of the people who did know me and knew me before. And they're like, this is so unlike Kaleb. And I would be swearing. And yeah, so it was really bad. And I didn't really get, I'd say, fully better. I was able to control it better later on in the hospital, but it wasn't fully better until maybe June, July. Probably June, I'd say, it was when I was actually kind of more myself. But yeah, that was due to the brain injury that I had. And yeah, I was not empathetic at all. I was disrespectful to quite a few people who I would never, ever be disrespectful to, or never to anyone, honestly. Yeah. And so that was definitely challenging. And then coming back, I just kind of became myself, like I said, in June.
Did you recognize you weren't you? Like, did you have that type of self-awareness, or did you not know?
It's over the first 4.5 days, I did not know at all. I had no idea. And then when I kind of came to my senses, and I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know why I came to my senses on that day or how it works. And I guess we'll go back with the marvel of the Dark Doctors. Based on my image of my brain, I shouldn't be able to remember my name, how to walk, how to talk. That's how severe a brain injury it was. And so throughout this whole process, it was difficult. I didn't really know how severe a brain injury it was until I started doing more testing and all that. So I didn't know that, but also I really didn't realize I was different until, oh boy, I'd probably say a week into it. And maybe even a little bit after. And it was when I started getting the pictures and videos of myself. And I was like, is this really me? Like, am I actually telling this? Am I saying this? And so, yeah. And I saw a picture of me and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and I had no idea he came to visit. I didn't even remember it whatsoever. I was like, I don't remember even meeting him. And my parents were like, oh, you should remember meeting him. I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you were really rude and didn't want to meet him and you didn't like him at all. And I was like, what? Like, what? So that was when it really hit me that I was way different. And then I could also feel myself wanting to be more, I was more agitated per se. I was like more high strung and agitated in the hospital. And so then, yeah, by the end of May, I was kind of back to my normal self. But yeah, with the doctors being marveled about it, it was they deemed me as a miracle, and that I honestly have done better on my tests than I did even before the crash.
Yeah.
So it's pretty unbelievable.
That's crazy.
I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to be in the best shape I possibly can be and still live a normal life.
Yeah, I was curious about that because I either I missed it or I couldn't pick it up. I was wondering if it was like a gradual kind of progression back to yourself, or was it like a light switch moment? It was more gradual.
It was gradual, yeah. So it was over every day I'd get a little bit better. But when I realized I was different was probably like the first week after the crash.
Right.
When I was in the hospital and I was like super agitated. I was never ever agitated. When I like get mad at certain things I would never get mad at, and I wasn't as easygoing as I normally was. So it was definitely a gradual process. Yeah. And more sleep, I think, was a big recipe was like getting lots of sleep and eating healthy, getting fresh air, and getting back to the normal kind of life. And then I was able to kind of become more myself. I think really it was due to the sleep though.
You had a good way of throwing a little bit of comedy in now and again in a very serious topic. And I had to read to, I have boys who are 11, 10, and 8, right? So any type of, poo jokes and pee-pee jokes and all that stuff is still pretty funny. So if you don't mind, I'll tell the one story there in the book that got me chuckling when, so Kaleb had a catheter in when the crash first started, and was, like, as he spoke, he was resistant and agitated and thought he should be able to go to the bathroom by himself and all this stuff. And his dad had just finished telling him again, I guess for the second or third time, that no, you can't go to the bathroom. You have a catheter and just let it go. And, and you were kind of shocked. And then shortly thereafter, I guess the doctor comes in and asks Kaleb a series of questions to see where he's at in his memory, and asked him if he knew why he was in the hospital. And Kaleb says yes. And the doctor goes, yeah, why is that? And you said, my penis. He said, you're here because of your penis. And what did you say? You said, well, I have other issues, but mostly my penis. Oh my God, that must have been a riot in that room. My goodness, my kids were dying at breakfast this morning. I thought that was pretty good. But obviously you don't remember that, right? You just, that was told to you after the fact.
Oh yeah. And see, like all of these stories in that 4.5 day get told to me after, and I was like chirping Johnny Gaudreau. I was being rude to Crosby, rude to Prime Minister. It was just like kept getting worse and worse. And I was like, well, people probably think I'm a monster right now because this is totally out of my character.
Right.
I was even rapping Eminem in the MRI room as we're waiting to get my MRI. Like it was just, it was different.
That is so nuts. I want to move on and talk about the boys a little bit. I mean, you did a fantastic job, of telling the events that you remember leading up to that moment in time. And for anyone who's been on a bus, the beauty of the bus is the bus, right? And the cat calls and the chirps and the questions, and it's 19 different guys every time, but it's always kind of the same. And so I could definitely relive those moments. It seemed like it was a special group even before that happened. And that's what Chris said. That's what Jackson had spoken about. Others on the team have said that before. The crash obviously immortalized that group of individuals in a period of time. But can you speak about that group? And I want you to speak, if you wouldn't mind, about the stuff that you guys did together and which you were a leader in. And I talk about leadership a lot, and I talk about the value of inclusiveness and the account of being a good teammate and how these things really do matter. Where in the whole spectrum do you think that decisions made by the leadership group, by the coach, brought those guys together and made you guys special?
Yeah, I think for me, the first part was that Darcy brought in good people first and then good players second. And that was the whole basis of our culture, was that we had good people in the dressing room and in the organization, so that on ice, there would be no issues, there'd be no cliques, anything like that. Obviously, you still have your best friends on team and you have your friends and your teammates. So I think that the big thing within our leadership group was that we wanted to connect with everybody and open up the floor to have certain special nights. And so we did lots of community service as well in the Humboldt community, which is another aspect that we were able to really kind of dive deep in. And we do like hot lunches at elementary schools where we'd all wear Broncos jerseys and serve lunch to the children, play at recess with them, or we'd go out and skate on ice with a practice. So we try to do quite a bit, or even the community skates too. We try to do quite a bit in that community to bond together and also bond with the community. And one of my favorites was like the snow shoveling day when we had to shovel snow for our community, and we played a game the next day afterwards. And it was our first game before, or last game before playoffs. So most hockey people know that last game before playoffs is like, you got to be dialed in, you got to be ready to go. Everything's going to be clicking because playoffs are coming up next. So it was really interesting in that atmosphere of community, but also away from the rink, we would do tons of other stuff, and we'd have, I guess, bachelor nights.
I love that one. That was great.
And then we do like bachelor TV, reality TV show we'd watch every Monday, and there'd be 15 plus guys on our 23-man roster. So like, I think that goes to show, and it was like closer to like, I'd say a good 20 every night, every Monday that would be there. So I think it was just so funny how tight knit we were. And it was, I don't think everybody loved The Bachelor. I think it was more they loved being with each other.
Yeah.
And then even Riverdale Thursdays, we do that too. And we also had Chapel, which would be like team event where we'd go and talk about life lessons and things that we can apply to our team, such as accountability, respect, love, and what are those things and how can we model that within our group. So we did tons of community events and team events that really made us close. And then the fact that we all had good people on the team who cared about each other and wanted to spend time with each other was another aspect that I'm very grateful to be a part of.
Yeah, that's pretty special. And it sounds like Darcy was a special coach. I've talked to hockey people outside of your team, like just from the coaching element and like how well respected he was, that he was a learner, that he wanted to continue to improve and to get better. And he wanted his team around him to get better with him, that he wanted to uplift people. And, it definitely didn't, I mean, hockey was what he was doing, but he understood that it was bigger than hockey. Right. And I think that's a pretty wild thing. And his first question was always, what type of person is he? And, it's one of the things I say in this group all the time and on the podcast is I think that's really the new evolution in hockey, I think, is not only coaching the person behind the player, but like looking for the person behind the player, right? That's going to help the player, but it's also going to help all these other things in the locker room, which you've spoke so eloquently about in your book. What do you think is the advantages of being a quality person? Like, how, to the message to the younger kids out there, like why should they matter? Right? Like, why does that matter? If they're a really good stick handler and if they're really good on the power play or they score points, why does it matter what type of person they are, or what type of teammate they are?
Well, because that's how you win championships. And you could have the most skilled team ever developed with all bad characters and they'll never win a championship, because character really determines your success. And that's what Darcy always alluded to, was that. But I think even carrying yourself and wanting to be a leader and be the captain of the team should be the highest regard, and not being the one with the most points. Mm-hmm. And I think that we lose sight in trying to find people who are getting the most points and not who is a captain, who's the heartbeat of the team, who leads by example the right way, and not just lead by example. Because there's some people that lead by example, but it's the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And you want people who lead by example, which is the right way, which is doing everything right, following the drills, going past the line when you're doing your bag skate, not cutting corners. Like, you want to be that good person. And it also dictates your future success in life. I know hockey is not a forever sport, and I wish it was, but it's not. And in the real world, and when you get out and you're not playing sport, you need to have these life lessons that hockey teach: accountability, trust, respect, hard work. These are all life lessons that you need, even leadership too, to succeed in the world outside of sport.
Yeah, you mentioned like our example is leading somebody. Like you might not even have a letter on your chest, or you just walk through life, right? You do something, somebody's watching, right? And that's going to have an impact somewhere. And that's one of the things that I try and talk about now is the whys, right? Like the why of what you're doing, to really understand it. Because the community service is amazing, right? But like, if you don't understand why, then it's just an action, right? Like, and I think that it sounds like Darcy was somebody that made you understand the why. Like, why is shoveling snow before this huge playoff game bigger and more important than that game, right? And when you do understand the why, then you can go out and be curious about how else you can be of service, or who else you can support and who else you can touch. And I think that is where I think good coaching meets great coaching, because when you can get the why down for those who are listening and those you are leading, then you got something, because now they can make decisions without you being there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the why in life is huge too, and finding your path into life and why you do the things that you do. Like, why would I hold the door open to someone else? And it's because I want to actually help the other person with their day and hope that they are doing well, and that this could maybe impact their day in a positive way, instead of having the door be slammed on their face just before they get there. And why would I go out for community service? And it's because it truly helps me helping other people, and it fuels my soul, makes me feel good to know I can put a smile on someone's face without expecting anything in return. And then even like lots of other things. Why do we even play hockey? And like, there's so many questions about, and you can search for those whys. And I think if we understand who we are as people and we are more self-aware, then we become better leaders too, because we know what works with us, we know what works within a team. And being a good leader opens opportunities for the future for sure. And the second that you aren't a good leader is the second the door starts to close. So that'd be a why you'd want to be a good leader, and why you'd want to embrace being kind to others, treat others how you want to be treated, is because your opportunity is open, because people want good people on their team. And that's what people are looking for nowadays, are better people than they are players.
Yeah. Well, people are understanding culture. I mean, obviously, if you can have both, you mean in the hockey world, if you can have immense talent, have immense character, well, that's when you get like a Sidney Crosby, like that's not an accident, like the two go hand in hand. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. And why I love talking about the why too, is because yes, you can try and build your resume of, okay, I'm going to do this because somebody's going to like me for it. But like, if you understand why you're actually doing it, like who it's benefiting, how it's benefiting you, and become authentic with those actions, that is when the phone picks up. And like, Darcy's not the only one. What type of person is he? What type of teammate is he? Yep. What's he like when things are down, right? Who's he supporting? Where's he active? Like, those things give you opportunities. And plus they allow you to become a better individual as a hockey player. Like right. Like your traits allowed you to become a player that you probably otherwise wouldn't, because you're able to look at things as, how do I get better? How do I attack this day in a way that I'm going to leave it better than I started, right? And that seems like that's a little bit of a philosophy you were living with there, which I think is so impactful, because if you build a dressing room with those types of guys, now you really got something. You talk about championships, right? Yeah. And you talk about family. That's the one thing with the teams that I was on. The ones that did well were the ones that hung out together.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. They just did everything together, and you wanted to be with each other, and you wanted to enjoy your time with each other, and you actually cherished that time.
Yeah. And not in groups, not in like the groups of 3 or 4, right? But like you said, together. Like, and you said you have to orchestrate those nights. So you have to be intentional about it, because it doesn't just happen. It's not like, oh, this year we got a good one. Like, it's like people pulling strings and like making sure that these events get organized, and then you start caring for each other. And when you start caring for each other, that's when really special stuff starts happening on the ice. And those are the moments, I mean, for sure, that I remember. Like, the years, they don't always lead to championships. Sometimes you get close and you don't quite get there. But those bonds and those relationships you just can't take away. And that's really the best part of the whole sport, in my opinion. But
sure.
We want to talk about the family first with Darcy, maybe. I mean, I think it seemed to really be authentic and real. I mean, it's one thing to put something on a dressing room wall, and I've been in those dressing rooms too, right? Yeah. It says perseverance, it says respect, it says this, but it's kind of hollow, because you don't really hear it. It's not ingrained in the DNA of what's happening. But that was the first words on the wall for him, was family first. And it sounds like that was really taken to heart. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me personally, my family is the hockey family too. And I would always put my family, my parents, and my actual family, and also my hockey family first. And I think that Darcy was meaning more of just like your own families first as well. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we all do come from different backgrounds, different grassroots. We all have different stories that make us the people that we are at that point in time. Because my story is not the same as someone else's story in that dressing room. And I think that's the cool, unique part about it, is that we all come from different families, and families should be first. And your teammates do become your family. And I think that I always put my teammates first. And even on our shirts, we had we before me on the back of one of our t-shirts. And it's so true, because we as a culture is always more powerful than me as a player. And if your team all buys in together, it's better than having one top player or a couple top players who think me is more important than the we. And so it was a buy-in, and this idea of having us all go together towards one common goal and become a family and love each other and want to spend time with each other and actually support each other through the highs and lows. Because there's not going to be always highs in your season. You're always going to be doing well. And it's always the families that are there, that are tight together, that will support you throughout that time.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of my, well, not one of my first pro roommate, Ryan Johnson, who's now involved with the Vancouver Canucks, GM of their farm team and director of player personnel, went on and had a amazing pro career, but was always kind of a fringe guy at the NHL level, right? Like, I shouldn't say fringe. Like he always had contracts. Somebody always wanted him, but he was kind of the fourth line, third line guy. And his approach and his character and the way he treated his teammates was what allowed him to have the longevity that he did. And one of the things that he said when he was dealing with the slump, which I thought was amazing because it was well beyond my emotional capability at the time, was that he would look across the room to find somebody else who was struggling. And he would put his focus on that person to try and lift them up. And in the idea of taking the eyes off himself, right, and whatever, trying to find answers or feeling sorry or finding for what's wrong, he would be trying to find what's right in that other person to help them. And that always lifted them both up, and I was like, wow, what a crazy, awesome, compelling perspective. Because, like, isn't that what we're there for anyways? Like, he actually helps himself at the end of the day, but he's helping somebody else while doing it. And it seemed to me like that's almost like the way you've approached some of the stuff in your life, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. I find healing in helping others. And it is sometimes a weird concept to think, but me, like you said, me lifting them up lifts me up too, because I'm helping them, but they are helping me just as much by filling up my emotional bank and making me feel good and warm on the inside that I'm doing something good for them. And so it works both ways, I think. And that's a great example of somebody doing that. So
yeah. There was the one story, and I can't remember the name that you gave them, but the four guys that you would drive
to the crew. Yeah.
The what crew?
Taxi crew.
Yeah, the taxi crew.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the taxi crew? Because I think, like, for me, as far as embodying, like, respect and empathy and equality and inclusiveness and all these things that are, like, easy words to say but maybe hard to enact, like, I think that really encompasses all those things. And for you to come up with that on your own at that age, to think that's a good idea and to enjoy doing it, and, like, to think that it's just the right thing to do. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's a really awesome story.
Thank you. Yeah. So for me, I was driving back from one of our exhibition games, and I saw that one of our super fans, and they are super fans of the Broncos, Dallas, had his bike that was broken, his chain, and he was walking back, and I just drove right by him, and I kind of was like, oh, that's Dallas, isn't it? So I stopped and turned around and went back. I was like, hey, do you need to ride back? Like, I see that you're walking your bike. He said, well, that'd be great. So I ended up hopping in my vehicle and took him back. And I found out in the chat that he normally would bike to and from the games, and that he wanted to be there early so he could see the opening face-off, and that sometimes the bus that they would normally get taken on sometimes leaves earlier because people have to go to bed earlier. So he was like, I usually try to bike or try to get a ride kind of thing afterwards so I can just stay for the full event. I thought, oh, well, why don't I just take you? Like, would you be okay with coming to the game with me and then leaving afterwards? He's like, so what do you mean? I was like, well, I'd bring you to the game, and then you'd be there about 2 hours early. It'd be a lot if you're okay with that. Then after, I'd take you back probably like half an hour to an hour after the game. And he was like, I'm down. I said, well, do you have any friends? He's like, yeah, can I bring some friends? Like, sure, just pack the vehicle, bring 3 others, and we'll load the vehicle and take you guys to and from every home game. And so he was like, oh, I can't wait. So throughout this, he would call me every single game day. He'd be like, hey, I'm ready to get picked up at this time. And I'm like, yep, you bet. See you there. And it was just super fun because it became part of my pregame ritual. But it was one of the highlights of every game day was picking up those guys. And they all had, they're all on the Special Olympics hockey team, or were a part of it in some capacity. And so I got to really get to know them on Monday nights when we did have Special Olympics floor hockey. And then they'd also be a part of my taxi crew. So I picked them up every game day. And yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. And we got lots of good memories. I'd crank the tunes, we'd jam out, we'd hear their thoughts, their interviews with me. I interviewed them. I had to put them as a coach. It was just really fun to really make the most of them and just treat them like regular hockey fans who just love the Broncos. So yeah, it was pretty special.
That is special because I remember, I mean, I've been to those events, right? Like where you'll go to a home and meet people, or you'll go to the hospital and meet the kids. And there's something to put a jersey on and represent and be involved in the community. But to take it that next level and to really immerse yourself, right? To make it a part of things. I mean, that's super special, man. And I mean, I'm going to say I'm proud of you for doing it, but it's like, well, I am proud of you for doing it, but it's like, I don't know, why is it so uncommon that people don't go in like that, you know? And what was your why for that? Like, speaking of whys, right? Like, why did you make that move to begin with and think that this was a good idea? A lot of times pregame preparation for hockey players is like super critical, right? Like to depend on somebody else, and you have your set ways, and now you're bringing 4 people in that you don't really know that are special needs. And, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of kind of things that people wouldn't go along with the ride for that.
Yeah. And for me, it was just, how would I want to be in that situation? And I also thought like they are missing the best part of the game. They're missing the opening ceremonies, and they're also missing if it goes in overtime. And I don't know if he was even serious or joking about it, but I about like the bus leaving early or the bus getting there late kind of thing. But either way, it was still a great time to get to know these people and actually build a bond with them. And I went to Humboldt also with the intention to really be involved in the community and really want to give back because it is fuel for my soul. And I didn't feel complete in Notre Dame. I was assistant captain my 9th year. Going into my 20, I just still didn't feel right. I wanted to do my Dahlgren's diabetes program, and I wanted to really be invested in a community. And there's only 400 people in Wilcox. So there really wasn't many fans. You didn't have that really community aspect. So for me, Humboldt was like a really big choice for the community. And I really just to treat others how I want to be treated too.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, for those of you who haven't read the book too, yeah, I mean, Kaleb made the choice to go to a bigger community, even though he was, you know, in a team that was, you know, being successful and he was a big part of it, but he wanted to be a part of this community where he could be more engaged in the community and get his diabetes program going and get some kids in there. And like, that's a super mature choice to make at that age. I know you, I think we're pressed on time because I know you're a busy man. You got another interview, so I'll definitely respect that. I guess I'll close. I mean, I'm an only child too, which I didn't mention, but like hearing you talk about your teammates, and I think for us that probably means a little bit more, like those guys in the locker room, because I didn't have a brother, I didn't have a sister, and those were my boys, those were my brothers, and like figurative words, literal words, and you know, like it's just that was my family. So I think that. I definitely have special bonds through everyone that I've played with, and I know that team is going to leave a mark on us all, and I'm just so proud. As actually, I'll put one comment here from B. Kaleb, you're a force that is going to help so many people, and already have. Keep it going, man. We are all proud of you. So,
thank you.
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job. You know, the book is amazing. For those of you who have not read it, by all means do. Please read it. I think at the back it says that, you know, part of any of the proceeds goes to is it the diabetes?
The Stars Air Ambulance. They help save lives. Yeah, help save lives on April 6th, and they literally save lives every day. So I wanted them to be recognized and thanked for all their support. So yeah, portion proceeds will be going to them.
Yeah. So if you didn't need any more motivation other than this might change your life, other than this might change your perspective or give you an idea about a belief system that you can, you know, digest and metabolize and use on your own. I mean, even the purchase of the book is going to help some people that help people every day. So, Kaleb, you're doing amazing things. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with us here. And I wish you nothing but the best moving forward.
Oh, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. It was awesome chatting with you too. We have very similar mindsets, so it's always nice to talk to someone like that.
Have a great day, Kaleb.
Thank you, you too.